Great. Okay, Dale, nice to see you. I'm just going to get up the group on my phone here. So I can just keep an eye on things whilst we're kind of connecting in and people are joining us. Where are we? What do I do? I press that one there, did I? Press that one. This is what I could do with help, you see. I could do with like a PA or something like that. I've got my husband, Dale, but he's not here at the moment. Yeah, so great. Oh, great. Dale.
Mine's not here either.
No, oh good. Oh, well, there, so we can talk about them now while they're not here.
Yeah.
Dale, thank you so much for joining me in the group today. It's I've been looking forward to this all week.
I'm really happy to be here. I've been looking forward to it too. It just seems like ages that we started planning this.
Yeah, and when we've spoken off air, you know, some of those conversations that you have just in the moment, you just wish you'd kind of let other people in on them.
Yes.
Because we covered so many things. We're going to cover some awesome things today. So welcome to everybody who's joined us. We've got the wonderful Dale Ward here today, and Dale is the author of the best-selling, let's put that in, book, Raising the Worst Dog Ever. We're going to come on to the title in a minute, Dale. But before we come on to that, we're going to reference the book a little bit today, everybody. But Dale and I have got a lot we want to unpack, really, about expectations and especially thinking about puppies and adolescents. There's a lot of things we're going to talk about, as well as referencing the book, of course, which we'll make sure we get links into the thread afterwards about the book. But Dale, just give us a little bit of introduction about yourself, who you are, how you got to what you do, and yeah, and a little bit about the book as well.
Okay, so I'm a dog trainer now. I have my own dog training business called Dale's Dog Training Academy. It was a convoluted road to get here, never expected to be here. As many of us, you know, that started off in different professions. I'm from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, and I lived there for almost 40 years. So I'm very Canadian. And then I ended up marrying America. Yeah. I wasn't just born there and then hopped over to the United States, but because I'm in the United States now. And I married an American, so ended up going to northern Wisconsin, and then now where I am in North Carolina. I started off in the corporate world. It's very, very different, but I think the skills I learned there really, really helped me as a dog trainer, because I did tons of interviewing people, and that was my job basically as a business analyst. So gathering information, running groups, and that kind of thing. So that skill set really easily translated over to dog training. And I ended up with a dog because when I moved to northern Wisconsin and left everything I knew, like everything, no friends, all my friends and the work and everything. And I married my American husband, Tim, and we lived on 47 acres in the middle of nowhere. And I mean, in the middle of nowhere. So the town that we were in, I think had 20 people in it or something. There was no town. So I found it really, really hard to adjust to that. And so I thought, what could I do? And I tried to figure out jobs I could do there. And this is sort of, we had dial-up internet. So this is how far back this is. This is a little bit back, like 20 years ago. So, working online was just not even, you couldn't even think of that. My gosh, remember we used to download updates overnight because we couldn't do it during the day. It took that long. So I ended up thinking, well, maybe I should get a dog because, all this time in the world. And, I grew up with dogs when I was young. So I thought, yeah, I'll get a dog. And so that's how I ended up getting Wylie. My black Labrador retriever, Wylie, one of Highbridge. And I got a Labrador retriever because I had experience with that kind of dog when I was a child and a young person. So I thought I knew them, so they were familiar. And so, yeah, I didn't even know the difference between an English lab and an American lab and a field lab, but I ended up with an American field lab. So I didn't know that at the time. I thought they were all kind of generic. And it was through raising Wylie that I ended up eventually becoming a dog trainer. And it's the story of Wylie and I and our journey together that ended up producing this. So, yeah. And when I went into it, I really had no idea of the bond that was going to form between me and my dog. I knew I'd like the dog. There was no doubt about that, but I had no idea of the strength of connection that you can develop with another species. That was a big surprise to me. And when I lost her, it was pretty devastating. So I thought, how could I honor her and her memory and what we went through together to get to the place where we had such a great life together. And my background is English, so I mean I wrote a gazillion essays in university, and so I thought, well, I can write. I think I can write. So that's where it all started. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
And I think the thing that I really loved about the book when I read it was, like we discussed before, there's plenty of training books out there, and there is an element of training kind of advice and support within the group. But the thing that makes it different as a book is that personal story, and how, as you know, the group, the Dog Centre Care group, is very much looking at the emotional experience and looking at that dog in front of you, that unique entity in front of you that may be a lab, but that is just part of it. And that's what really comes across in the book. It's really open and candid, and the struggles and the difficulties that come. And I think anybody who brings up a young dog from puppy or adolescent, or goes through adolescence, will really it will really resonate with them. I'm going through it right now, Dale. I could I must make sure I reference it when I struggle with mine. But even as somebody who works with dogs, it's a struggle, and you forget, actually. It's quite humbling. I think we should all go and have a puppy again at some point, just to remind ourselves, oh yeah, this is what my clients are going through right now. Yeah, because it's very easy, I think, isn't it, as a professional, to kind of be a little bit formulaic about things with a client without recognizing that they're living with that dog 24/7 and all the things that come with it. And actually, a lot of these things, they aren't necessarily training solutions. It is about trying to make those adaptations for that dog's environment. And big thing that comes across in the book a lot is this thing about managing expectations.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes I leave a puppy client, leave the session, and I think, phew, I'm glad I'm not going through that right now. So, because my dog, who's asleep beside me here, is 6 now. So yeah, that's removed. And I think it's really good that we have this selective memory too, because going through puppyhood and adolescence, and you say, oh, it was so hard, but then you kind of forget, and you enjoy this lovely relationship with your dog. And it's like, when you get another puppy, it's like, what? My last dog wasn't like this. It's like, yeah, it probably was. Yeah. So yeah, what was the question?
That wasn't a question really, but I was just saying about the things from the book about and just more generally about having what I like about the book is how you kind of give a warts and all overview of going through that process with Wylie and learning from her, and recognizing that actually that is just as important as the learning she does from you.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, she taught me so many things. Patience is one, and now I have incredible patience with dogs. The other areas of my life, not so much, but I've developed it a lot with animals. And yeah, I do think it's really, really important for people to recognize that every dog is going to be different that's in front of you. I feel really badly when, I end up in a home where they got another dog, and it was to quote unquote replace the dog they lost, and they get the same breed, the same gender. And then they say to me, this is not like my other dog. And, my answer to that is, of course, it's not like your other dog. This is a new dog. It's got its own personality, just like kids, right? I mean, you might even have 2 kids from the same household. They don't have the same personality. So it's the same deal. So managing those expectations in clients, I think is really, really super important right from the get-go, so that they're able to almost be, develop empathy, but be forgiving of the things that your dog is doing. They're just dog things. We might not like it at the time, and we can direct it into something maybe more productive, but to develop that, oh, it's okay. My dog is okay. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people think I've got a wild child, and, you know, sometimes they are a wild child.
And I think that's a couple of things you said there, because it happens a lot, and I get it as well. When we think about our relationships with these wonderful animals, they bear witness to our life events. They're more than just a furry companion. They are with us through all sorts of things, and say they bear witness to that. So when we lose them, that sense of loss, we grieve on many levels. It's not just for their passing. There's other things that go on, and because we can replace physically, so it's okay, I'm going to have another dog now, and it's very easy to fall into that trap of looking for another Rover, because that's what Rover was for me. But also, then we have that big clash, right? Because not only is it can't be another Rover, not the same, we're looking at two dogs from very different ends of their lives, because the Rover we remember is that wise Rover, the one that can self-regulate well, the one that navigates the world around them with some panache and some able to do it, and knows our ways and all that kind of thing. Now we've got this little bundle of trouble. Let's face it, they come crashing in. When Molly came crashing in, she was 14 weeks, so she wasn't a puppy in that sense, but she came in at 14 weeks. But yeah, we weren't prepared for her either, Dale, because she came from as a kind of a emergency foster. So we weren't thinking, oh, let's think about getting a puppy. So everything was turned upside down. And honestly, the place, even their home, was just kind of within days. It was just like some kind of bomb had gone off in a local pet shop. There's just stuff everywhere. So yeah, I think that's a really important point you raised there, because we've all been there. We all want to replace and we want to nurture. And so these little dogs that come in already, we're projecting a huge amount onto them that they can never fulfill potentially.
Right,
so,
right.
So we have to support the caregivers through that, don't we?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And, you know, even when I got Rhubarb, which was, I guess about a year after Wylie died, for the first, oh gosh, I'd say 3 months, I did not like this dog. I kind of resented her. Every time I looked at her, all I could see was Wylie. So I really understand what people are going through when that happens in a client consult. So, I mean, I got through it, and thank goodness I have, you know, a good husband, Tim, who helps me through everything, all these like weird emotional things. It's like, yeah, he's like, it'll be good. It'll be good. He's like the steady guy, you know? So, yeah. And then, you know, they just inch their way back in, you know, it's like, okay, they just do. So, and you have to know that one dog will never replace another, but I like to think about it as they sit side by side in your heart. That's the way I like to think about it. So they just keep sitting side by side.
They do, and I think you know, we've always cheated a little bit because we have multiple dogs at any one time, so it kind of softens the blow a little bit when we lose one, and we already have those other eyes looking at us to continue that support. So it's not like a big cliff edge where suddenly we don't have that dog anymore. And I think there's a lot of things that we have to support caregivers in as part of that new puppy adolescent experience, because it's overwhelming anyway. I think I can't remember who said this. It might have been Steve Mann, but it might not have been. I can't remember. Anyway, but somebody said puppies are either harder, or oh my God, what have I done? Right?
Yes.
It's never easy.
And often all three.
And often all three. Yeah, exactly. And we go through stages of that. But I'm sure, I haven't got children, but I'm sure it's the same when that newborn comes along. It's like, oh, let's have a baby. And then the reality of what that baby means, it's hard. It's a lot big adjustment to make.
It is absolutely. And you know, if I can, I try to get people, it's really heavy into management with puppies, you know, and some people don't want to change anything in their lives. It's like they want to leave their house the same, everything's the same, and they expect this puppy to be able to, you know the difference between their own chew toy and that, you know, $10,000 carpet they have on the floor. It's like, I would roll that up just you know. So it's hard sometimes to get them to realize that they have to adjust their own lives to help them. It's to help them so that you're not constantly running after that puppy going, no, 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 no. You don't develop a great relationship that way. You develop resentment that way. So getting people to just make these small changes and small adjustments, with also the caveat that it doesn't have to always be like, you're not going to always have gates, and you're not going to always have, you know, your rugs rolled up or whatever it is. You'll be able to bring that stuff out. But for now, let's pick our battles. That's one of my big things, is pick your battles, you know.
And this is really important stuff. And I think we have to be mindful or be wary of turning up to see clients from a professional point of view with just a training toolkit, because it's the survival skills that the caregivers really need to learn early on. When Arthur, he's an old boy now, but he was hard work, Dale. I could have done with having read your book back then. So he came straight out of a barn. So he's a collie, spring across. So he's a sprolly, very sensitive. Everything in the world is too much for him.
Right.
You know, so it's difficult. And he was really, really hard work. But our spare room just got fuller and fuller and fuller with stuff, because as he identified things that he wanted to destroy because of his nervousness, he'd be like, I'm going to destroy everything. So rather than just, like I say, telling him off, putting up more barrows, we just kept moving stuff into the spare room till eventually it was full, you know, like standard lamps and side tables and everything else.
Right.
But like I say, it wasn't forever. And I think we've just got to let people know these adjustments we make now for this next 6 to 12 months can just take a lot of pressure off of you. It's about making it less stressful for the caregiver, isn't it?
It absolutely is, yes. And you know, sometimes it takes just a couple of weeks for them to go, okay, I'm gonna move stuff. So at first they think, oh no, I can manage this. Like you know, this was me and Wylie. I can do this. I can do this. It was like, oh wow. I was really lucky because our house was new, so we didn't have much. And when I moved down to the US, I sold everything. So we were kind of bare bonesy anyway, so there wasn't much to put away. But I learned pretty quickly, you know, those little scatter rugs that you have, you know, in the kitchen and stuff, those have to go. And I was also lucky living up north. We often have a vestibule when you come in, so it acts like almost like an airlock for the cold air, you know. And so we had a door, so all our boots and shoes and everything were already sort of gated off with the door of the vestibule, so I didn't have to worry about that. But I mean, everything went into that dog's mouth, everything, absolutely everything, didn't matter what it was, including me, you know. So yeah, and I remember that first Christmas with the Christmas tree is, oh my gosh, and it never even occurred to me to put like an X pen around it, but I know that now. But yeah, going in with just training, I mean, when you think about it, when you're there with your client, and you're seeing the puppy for the first time, and this I just did one last couple of days ago, last week, brand new dog owners, never had dogs before. That's always my favorite, the brand new, don't know what they're getting into thing. And they got a Labrador Boykin Spaniel cross, and she is adorable. She's so cute. And the first lesson, she came a little bit too early. She was only 7.5 weeks old, but you know, it is what it is. That's the other thing. It is what it is. You know, there's no point in going backwards. And she was all curled up. She was quiet. She was such a cute little thing. And I came back this week, and she's bouncing off the walls. And I warned them. I said, you know, that's not good. I mean, that's probably not going to last. But yeah, so they're getting their eyes open pretty quickly, that's for sure. And when you go in there and you think, I think they thought I was going to go in and teach sit and down, and you know, teach them the operant, you know, obedience things, and then they're going to be able to just tell the dog sit and it'll sit, you know. And I told them the first lesson, that's not where we're focusing anything. We're focusing on management and how you interact with the dog, so that we're actually giving feedback to the dog that it can use to choose to do other behaviors other than, you know, biting your arm off. So I think they were a little leery, but I told them that, you know, teaching like a dog to sit is like this so easy. It's so easy. And it's not where you need to focus. But I think with clients, they like to see these little things that fit into what their mind thinks their dog should do. So teaching a dog to sit, a little puppy to sit, which takes what, under 3 minutes, really? And to see the clients going, oh my goodness, look at that. They just think my dog is brilliant. And I said, yes, your dog is brilliant. Look at that. So it gives them a sense of pride. It also gives them some kind of hope that, you know, behavior can be taught and managed, so that they just feel like there's kind of, I like it. It's like a two-pronged approach, you know, it's all the management stuff, but I think with clients, we absolutely need to include some of the operant stuff in there, but it's the secondary thing. It's after all of the other things need to happen. Then I think you can get a client on board.
Yeah, and I think I didn't do puppy classes, I only do puppy one-to-ones in people's homes. But any kind of teaching of the things you're describing is always the last thing I kind of offer into the mix. But one of the reasons, well, there's many reasons, but I think we talked about this off air a little bit, about the expectations that are put out there, especially on social media, regarding what training is, and somehow, you know, house training dog in 5 days, 100% this, that, or the other, have the obedient dog in 6 months. Who are these dogs? It's not real life. And the more we put in on that kind of training thing early, the more we're actually potentially suppressing some of the abilities for that dog to be able to look for some of those relief-seeking behaviors that are really important. A lot of the puppy problem behaviors are actually a sign of elevation in that puppy brain takes over. And then if we've gone in with the training first, the caregivers are just going, sit, sit, sit. Why won't the dog do this? Why won't the dog do that? Because they feel that's the solution. But actually touching with them at first about, look, I'm here to save your sanity here, right? Because I want you to come through the other end of this in one piece. Yes. So we're going to do it this way. This is how it's going to look. And when you say it in those kind of terms, and I've not met any caregiver that I've worked with that hasn't got invested in that, because they don't want to have all the distraction. They don't want to have all the sleepless nights. They don't want to have all the stress. So we're playing to their need for relief as well. And as you say, two types of dogs tend to walk through the door when you get puppies. You get the ones who are really quiet for a while because they're shut down a little bit because they're away from mom, and then they kind of find their feet, and then suddenly, like the one you just described, there's this pocket rocket everywhere. So other ones come in as the pocket rocket because that's the stress response. They're really stressed. That's what happened with Molly. She was absolutely, we called her Molly Shark, because she took puppy biting to the, you know, she was degree level, right? Yeah. And that was because of all the stress she was under. She was just under a huge amount of stress, so we had to give her time to decompress. And a lot of the stuff we teach dogs, we're better off waiting till that brain's ready for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I missed that last little part. You froze there for a minute.
Oh, sorry, Diane. Yeah, I was just saying, also a lot of the training I think that caregivers want to do, it's just reassuring them, like you say, that that's the easy stuff. The training is the easy bit, actually. Getting your dog to learn to self-regulate, have a good balanced kind of nervous system through the process of going through adolescence is key, really. So yeah, I think that's where, and that comes across in the book a lot, because you learned that. This is the good thing, Dale. You learned the hard way with Wylie.
I did.
So people don't have to. You've saved a lot of people a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and I think I've gotten a lot of feedback on the book from caregivers that it helps them not feel alone. It helps them know that, oh, she went through what I'm going through right now, and this is how I handled it, and the mistakes I made along the way are like, they're out there for everybody to see. I was a little nervous about writing that stuff in the first place, because it's like, whoa, but you know, I thought, we all make them. We all make those mistakes. And the important thing is to learn from them and hopefully not repeat the mistakes. But, you know, nobody's perfect. And one of the things about dogs is how forgiving they are, you know, with our mistakes. So yeah. And I'm really big with clients and puppies also on, you know, let's teach them to self-soothe. When you first broach that with a client, sometimes it's like, what? Like, I don't understand why we're not just teaching, a recall and a sit and all those just ordinary, easy behaviors to teach, as opposed to let's get the dog comfortable in the home. Let's get the dog playing with toys, that kind of thing, as opposed to, your legs. And then I also spend a lot of time on, really, dogs don't care what you say, and they don't care what your intent is. They watch you and they watch how you interact with them. So even if your intent is to stop them jumping on you and saying no or pushing the dog down, they don't care anything about that. They just respond to the humans touching me, the humans talking to me. And I, especially, get a big dog, especially like a lab, who just generally bred to love people and to work closely with people. That jumping on people and pushing and that game that you create, that I created so strong in Wylie by mistake. I tried everything that everybody told me, all the old dog training lore, hold your dog's paws up and pinch the paws. She didn't care. She couldn't have cared less what I was doing. She just loved the game of the jump and come back and the jump and come back. So it's so important to get them to realize, to watch what your body is doing, watch where your hands are, watch what you're doing. So because the interpretation of the dog is really different from what you intend.
That's a really important point, isn't it? And I think this is something else which, as professionals, we need to really stress to those owners of the young dogs, because the caregiver wants us to do a lot of teaching, that structured learning.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about there is recognizing that actually that structured learning has potentially little value to the dog, actually. But they're learning all the time through that experimental learning. What is this about? What is that about? Does this work? Doesn't that work? Can I find relief from this? Does this get me what I need to do? And actually getting caregivers to understand that dynamic is more important, again, because if they feel they've got to keep falling back on some kind of training cue, which the dog doesn't have necessarily a lot of value about, especially with what they're feeling at the time, all sorts of things can get lost in translation then very quickly, can't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the frustration just mounts on both sides, right? So I mean, a person who's dealing with a large adolescent dog, who's trying to quote unquote control it by number one, people try to control their dogs with their voice, right? That's the first one. They sit, and it gets louder and louder and louder. And then also just trying to shape the behavior by either pushing down on the rear end or some physical form of trying to get the dog to do what you want. That gets old fast, and you see it not working, and you just don't know what to do as the owner of that dog. It's like they become impossible, and they end up outside a lot of the time. It's like, oh, I don't know what to do with this dog, and I'm just going to put it in the yard and not deal with it.
There's a lot of exclusion, I think, for young dogs, but there is for children. I think when you think about how easy it is for parents of human children to also get overwhelmed by this process of having a view of what that behavior should look like. We know now, of course, that both dogs and human children share something in as far as neurologically they're kind of designed to dysregulate when they're younger, and it's very difficult for that part of the brain that is there to help with moderation and modulation. It just isn't online yet, and even just letting caregivers know that can be really transformative for their view, to recognize that it's very rarely, if ever, the puppy won't do something. It's because they can't, because they're not processing properly. Exactly. They're too stressed, they're whatever they're going through, there's too much going on in the environment. Yep.
It gives them, I think, people need the information to be able to understand that their puppy isn't being spiteful. Their puppy isn't being disobedient. I try to work out all of those terms just out the door when I'm working with people. It's like there's got nothing to do with whether or not a dog is, being mean to you. It's like, no, that little puppy's not being mean. But and trying to get them to understand that the behaviors are not good and bad. So that's one of the first things I also include in my first puppy consult with someone is let's unlabel all those behaviors. So there's not good behaviors and bad behaviors. There's behaviors you like, and there's some you don't like, but they're all just normal puppy behaviors. And that really takes the pressure off. They, as far as, oh, do I have a good dog or a bad dog? We set up these dynamics, and it's not fair to the people trying to navigate this, but it's also really unfair to the puppy. So yeah, that's one of the first things I try to get out of the way, and just let people calm down about that. It's and sometimes and this with human children too. This just I think it was Grisha Stewart on her page said something about, oh gosh, I can't remember the whole thing, but how you don't just plunk kids in front of the TV, so you don't just do that same kind of equivalent with a dog. But my point was, sometimes you need to plunk a kid in front of the TV just for a few minutes. We have to save our sanity. And I remember with Wylie, there was at least 2 times that I remember. I was home all day with her. Tim was at work, and she was driving me insane. And I didn't know I could leave her at all. I was like, it was like 100% hands-on with her. So I was always with her. And he came home twice, and she was in her crate, and I was in some other room crying my eyes out saying, I can't do it. I can't do it. And he'd come home and he opened the crate, and it's like, what are you talking about? Out she comes, la, 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 la. Like as if nothing, So I said, but I'm with her all day. She's driving me crazy. And she ripped up my arms with her. It's probably the same as you and your dog with the puppy biting. And it was just like super stressful for me. And then he'd come home and she'd be really good for him, So then it would make me really mad. Like, why are you being good now? And you were such a terror, when I was with you. It's like, well, because she's tired now, because she's worn herself out annoying me. So there were definitely times when you need that equivalent of plunking your dog in front of the TV. Oh, I know what it was with Grisha. We were talking about using food toys and that kind of thing, that you don't always just give them a food toy, Well, sometimes you give them a food toy, because there's got to be a balance there between the human's ability to cope with what's going on, and the dog learning that sometimes this is what's going to happen. And if you do it right with dogs, they love those things. So you have to watch frustration levels with toys. So it's not always just give it a Kong, although we love Kongs. Sometimes I have a German Short-haired Pointer that if you give him a frozen Kong, his stress level just goes like this, because he can't get at the stuff fast enough. So he doesn't get frozen anything. He gets easy stuff to do. So, and that's another point I think we were talking about before, is there's not a one size fits all for every dog, and if you just show up with this is my plan, I always do, you're not going to be successful. But I think that that's where experience comes in, and what can you do? It's all about problem solving, right? You go in and you see what the situation is, what the dynamics of the people are there kids there? What do you need to do? Like I also had one client, this was a kind of a cool thing. One of the big things is clear your counters, right? When you have a big dog, because they're going to be up there. And but some people, number one, can't clear their counters for whatever reason. They're just not organized. I mean, not everybody is able to do some of the things that would make it easy. So there's other ways that you have to figure out how can I make this easy for this family? There was one where the dad would come in from work, he's really tired, and he'd go, it's the same habit every day, go to his chair, sit down, take off his work boots and put them beside the chair. And the dog could not leave those boots alone. It was like, yes. So he'd be stealing the boots, and then we tried, oh, well, put them on the other side of the gate and in the closet, and it just didn't work because he's tired. This is what he wants to do. So we bought him like a plastic lid thing, container, put it right beside his chair, and it was just the right size for his boots. So he took his boots off and he put them in the container and closed the lid. Problem solved. You don't have to do anything else, right? So you can come up with creative solutions for people that doesn't involve them changing some of the habits that they find really, really difficult to change, and that are not going to change. So with counters that have stuff on them, then you gate off the kitchen completely. That's just no access, because don't trust that dog in there with the, loaf of bread, and if you have kids and they're eating, then dog has no access to that, period. So so there are ways to do it. I mean, it's wonderful if you think you have an ideal client and you say they follow everything you do. Every once in a while you get a person like that and you think, yes, you're doing everything. Wow. So but that doesn't happen very often. So so there's always little creative ways to try and help families live with their dogs without having this constant, oh, my dog ate this, my dog ate that, destroyed the kids, whatever. So yeah, you need a lot of creativity in dog training and trying to deal with the families and make it easy for them, as easy as possible anyway.
And that's the key, and I love having those creative strategies, because and that's a really good example there with the boots, right? Because rather than go through some kind of big training plan with the dog, or really put the pressure on the guy, just make it really easy for him. And I think caregivers, owners, they really like those solutions, because they give them a chance to, okay, that's one less thing for me to worry about. I had a lady who, when she phoned me, she said, right, my puppy's driving me nuts. I've got through 5 TV remotes. So in the back of your mind, you think, at what point in those 5 do you think maybe I need to put my TV remote away? But there could be reasons why. And this is the thing, we've just got to think about these things. And the environmental side of things is really important, because I think one of the main roles for us going in is to actually help the caregiver, the owner, see the puppy they have, see that individual dog, point things out. How does that dog process the social environment? How does that dog like to learn? What does that dog's day look like? Because I'm sure you're the same. For me, a lot of the issues that people say is, oh, do you know what, my dog's pretty good in the day, but from 6 o'clock in the evening, they're absolutely all over the place. So I always say that we've got to try and head your dog off at the pass here. Let's think about those rituals and routines for the evening. Let's try and look at that day. And if we're going to use things like, dog safe toys and appropriate toys and that kind of thing, let's try and utilize them at the right time of day where the dog can get the most out of them, and so can you. Because like you said earlier, the caregiver needs that time out. And again, it's a similar story for kids, isn't it? Often it's the wife, the woman, not always, I know, but whoever it is, one partner's at work all day, the other person's got the dog all day, and just when they're settled, that's when the other partner comes in, and it all becomes a big thing, and they want to play with the puppy and get the puppy all wound up, and then you've got a wound up puppy all night. And it's just talking to people about the dynamics, I think. And most people, I find, when you frame things well for them, they can join the dots themselves, they can see it. And when they start getting relief themselves, I talk about relief a lot because I think it's really important. We all like that feeling of that's easier. And a lot of that does come from that environmental management and those little hacks you're talking about, those kind of little, okay, what can we do here? I had a lady recently, they've got a huge garden, beautiful garden with sea views, views over the sea and everything. And their dog was just going nuts in this whole big garden. So I just said, well, why don't we just have a little bit? Just have a little bit. We'll get some old bits of wood and create a little bit you don't have to worry about, and the dog can have as their little bit. And it's just a simple solution for that dog at that point in their development. Like I say, it's not forever. That's a really important thing that people need to recognize. Right.
And with Rhubarb here, and people might think it's strange, but for the first 6 months of her life, we have a huge fenced yard and garden, same deal. And there's, there's bark and, the shredded stuff and gardeny stuff, and there's just stuff everywhere. And but it's a big yard, and I did not let her off leash in that yard for the first 6 months of her life. And I don't mean a little leash, I mean she dragged a long line. So because I didn't want her in the rose bushes, because number one, I can't get under there to get her, and it's very, there's a lot of pricky things. And so by having the long line, if I couldn't entice her back to me for whatever reason, I have the long line for safety, right? It's like, no, don't go in there, come on over here, so I could easily redirect without worrying that I'd have to chase her or try and corral her. I really did not want to do that with my dog. And I also prevented, because she was a really big put everything in your mouth dog. One of the first things I worked on with her is to drop, because there's a cue that I think with a dog like this, super important, super fast, drop that, and make it worth her while, right? To drop things. And but while she's learning all that, I want to prevent, same as I want to prevent inside with management. And so the long line is just, for me, it's one of those things. It's like, wow, I use that all the time. And then I don't have to worry about, her escaping. It's a fenced yard, but she can escape the people very easily if she really wanted to. And so, so it was there as a safety, basically, for her. And then once she grew up a little bit, let her up. She's 100% free now, of course. But once I did that, she did not bother the rose bushes. She did not bother. The only thing in the garden that she can't keep her hands off of, or actually her mouth off of, is the asparagus, because it's really good. But at this point, I kind of let her have it, because like, what the heck? That's the other thing, with people. I want them to be a little bit free to quote unquote give into their dogs. They think by allowing something that is supposed to not happen, we get these preconceived ideas. Like, I'm sure it happens to you too, where you go in and say, oh, my dog sleeps on the with me, and I know that's not good. It's like, it's really good if you like it, Yeah. So, but they have these preconceived ideas about what a good dog is supposed to do, and I not allowed on the couch, and I'm letting my dog do all this stuff. It's like, I let my dog do everything, including have the asparagus. So you don't have to conform to these things. And I really want people to basically free themselves from those constructs, because it really, really does limit your relationship with your dog.
Yeah, and I think people need to have the space and the support, of course, to find what that relationship looks like with their dog, and what they are and are not happy with, and we're quite a kind of a free roaming family, really, with our dogs. We within reason, we like them to kind of have agency and do what they need to do. Molly's our young lab. She's about 9 months nearly. She's really coming into her own now. She comes from a farm background, so there's a good chance she comes from a working line probably, and you can see that in her. So we're supporting some of those aspects for her, and giving her those opportunities to do those kind of things. And most importantly, we're giving her the time to find some off switches. And I think that's something else as well, that we focus a lot on the doey stuff. We forget about giving that time where the dog can really connect to kind of the off switch. But what we're talking about here, I think ultimately, is, we talked about this off air, and it's a really important point. We owe every dog that first 2 years. Again, I think there's this notion in the zeitgeist somewhere that the dog should be this, that, or the other, that obedient dog by 6 months. If you do all that training, then that's the time and that's it. And we sell that a lot as a training community, where actually we need to let people know, it's going to take a couple of years for that dog to really show who they're going to be at the end of that. And you're going to see many reincarnations of your dog during that period of time as they go through various development stages and all the kind of the huge hormonal and neurochemical flux that they go through during that period of time. And we were talking that sadly, over here, there was a statistic from a few years ago, I can't remember what year now, but about 40% of dogs that come into rescue are adolescent dogs, a lot of them adolescent males, actually. And you were saying that kind of computes with what you see over there with the rescues, how many dogs end up being surrendered because people have that unrealistic expectation. They've been sold a notion that somehow their dog needs to be obedient, and they struggle with the fact the dog isn't. And they feel that somehow their dog has failed, or they've failed their dog. And they might have been just a month or two away from having that dog shift another corner where the dog's able to mature a bit more and do more and cope with more.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's the same deal here. I volunteer with Lab Rescue here, and the vast majority of the owner surrenders are anywhere between 8 months and a year and a half is the big that's where the sort of the main population of owner surrenders happen. Or we find they're older dogs, but they've been living outside forever, because in the south you can, because it gets cold every once in a while, but for the most part, a lot of dogs here can live outside. A lot of hunting dogs live outside here. We have a huge population of hunting dogs down here, and it always makes me sad when I'm driving along and I see the kennels on the side where that's all they do is they just stay in their kennels all day and outside. And so there's a lot of that here. And but once I guess they get tired of the dog, and it's like, okay, it's been outside for like 3 years and I'm just going to get rid of it because like it's no good, no good to me, because they have no relationship with that dog. None, absolutely none. And the good news is they almost always find wonderful homes for these dogs. So that's fantastic. But yeah, we need to let people have the permission to know that their dogs aren't going to be perfect, and to make sure they understand that you're going to go through a lot of ups and downs. There's a little cartoon with dog training. People think it goes like this, right? And it goes like this, really, till you get to the end. Because it's just the way it is. Anymore, I always like to bring it back to kids, especially for people. I don't have any kids, but for people who have children, I think it helps them understand, because they see it with their own kids, what they went through. And one of the big things I like to get people to understand too is I use the example of teaching your human child the alphabet, and how many times you would have to repeat A, B, C, D. How many times do you think when you're raising your child, how many times do you think you repeat that? We sing it to them, we read books to them, they watch Sesame Street, we teach them in kindergarten. I mean, I can't even imagine thousands and thousands and thousands of repetitions, right? And yet with our dogs, people expect them to know something after like 2 tries.
And especially with young dogs at a point where neurologically it's hard for them, because that ability to kind of retain information is difficult. And I think the kids analogy is a good one, because would you let your 6-year-old have a key to the house so they can just come and bring the mates around? You wouldn't. You'd wait until they got a bit older, right? And it's the same with, like you're talking about, with the freedoms we give our dogs. It's much better to make that world quite small and safe, and provide lots of learning opportunities for them to do that experimental learning in the early days. And then build that world up. But it is how we frame things. And as a community, as an industry, it's not helpful for caregivers, I don't think, because there's so much information out there, and a lot of it is contradictory. A lot of the stuff that gets on telly is really naff. That's the kind of main thing in zeitgeist for them. So having this kind of conversation, especially for the caregivers in the group, is really great, Dale. And this is what, again, what I love about the book, because there are the training elements in there. And I also love about how even with the training sections, you're giving choices. Try this, or try that, or try this. But it's the narrative, it's the story of your frustrations with Wylie that I think makes it really accessible, because on the one side, you're saying here are some of the things that we do, and this is how training can work. But on the flip side, through your own example, you're saying, but the big factor here is your dog, your individual dog. And seeing behavior, you very much saw this with Wylie, is recognizing that behavior has two other functions from the dog point of view. The behavior is an expression of self. You know, Wylie had his own way of expressing him, and also behavior is an expression of need. And we seem to override that a lot with a lot of the stuff that's in the more kind of mainstream stuff regarding dog training, those expectations on the young dog. A lot of the behaviors that we class as needing fixing early are just dogs trying to express need. And often it's because they're seeking connection. They're seeking a connection, they're seeking safety. And you cover that so well in the book. I can't believe it, Dale. We're coming up to the hour, which is crazy. I know, it's crazy. But we've got about,
crazy.
I know, we've got about 10 minutes left. But so I would really advise the book is advised by a lot of people. You were saying like veterinary behaviorists and other trainers, because I think caregivers can really kind of associate with it, even if they don't necessarily get some of the training bits. They can definitely get the story and even the title, right? So raising the worst dog ever. I know you had some flack by that in the back of the day because people just saw the title, but I think it really resonates with people because we feel that when we're going through it, because we think, where am I going wrong? What is wrong with this dog? Why can't it be like that dog on the telly?
Yes, absolutely. And that was me. The one thing that comes to mind with that is me taking her to dog training classes for the first time. And it's like, oh my gosh. I just, you know, maybe it's because it was me in it, but I still haven't seen a dog that was that crazy going into a dog training class. She was a totally wild child. And all, you know, made me feel so bad because all these other dogs are walking around in their circle and they're already all behaving. And I've got this alligator right beside me, you know, doing those alligator rolls, and it was absolute mayhem. And it's like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I control my dog? That was the big thing with me. I just felt so inadequate with her. I just felt like I should be able to do this. And, you know, I was an accomplished person in so many areas of my life. And yet this little being here was totally getting the better of me. And yeah, so telling those stories, hopefully some of them are funny. I hope some of them are made people laugh. There's a range of emotions in this book. I'll tell you that much. There's some really serious stuff at the beginning, and then there's a lot of craziness and some fun stories, like the one where she stole my $350 snowshoe. That was a good one. And there's so many of those little things in there. And then there's some, you know, some sad parts too. So most people say they laughed a lot and they cried a lot in the book. So
yeah, I want to come on to the cry a little bit in a minute, actually, because that's one thing I just wanted to touch upon. But I think when we think about you in that space then, and I would say this to anybody else who's listening, who's been in that space where you're at a place where the other dogs seem to be doing it right and your dog is not. The people in the room where the dogs are doing it right, they've learned about training. You're the one who's learned about dogs. You're the one who's learned about your dog. And I think it's a humbling exercise. But I think it's important to frame it that way because virtually everybody I've spoken to on these Facebook Lives when we discuss their way into kind of working with dogs, I've not met anybody yet who woke up one day thinking, oh, I'd be a dog trainer. It's because of the dog you have or the kind of experiences you have. And it's that humbling process of recognizing, okay, I've got to find a way. I see our approach the dogs as being the flip side to us learning about their body language. It's just the two sides of the same coin, really. And it's trying to find a way of that coexistence with this other species and learning things out. And for too long, this is just my opinion of what it's worth, but for too long, we put the emphasis too much on the how dogs have to learn what we want them to do, and not enough on us learning what it is they need. And that comes across very, very clearly in the book. And I think that's what makes it very accessible, I think, for caregivers. One thing to touch upon, of course, is for me, and I hope you're happy to, or okay to talk about this, but when Wiley's story came to an end, and that the passing of Wylie, and I think you touched on that really, really powerfully, I think, at the end of the book, because there is a beginning, a middle, and an end to this story. And there was a huge amount invested in that story on both sides of the leash, and both ends of the leash here for that. And I think even that, I think it's good for caregivers to read that part of things, because it's a part of the story, the kind of relationship journey that doesn't get talked about in books enough. So did you R about including that in, or was it always going to be part of the process to kind of think?
It was always going to be part of the process.
Yeah.
I wanted to be her life, and her life ended, just like we all know. We all go in knowing this, right? Does it make it easier? No. But yeah, I always knew that. When I came home from the vet that night, I don't know, 2 or 3 days. It was like a big fog, really. I sat down at my desk and I just took a pen and a bunch of pieces of paper, and I just wrote everything down. I didn't care, just stream of consciousness, basically, of everything that happened leading up to the events, and everything that happened, basically, because I thought, I'm not going to remember this. And I knew at that point I really wanted to write a book about her, and I needed to have this written down somewhere. I thought I wouldn't have been able to do it. So I wrote about 35 pages. I just blah, 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 blah. It's like a big mental, dump of my brain at that point. And then I just put it in a drawer and put it away. And it was away for, oh gosh, a few years. I didn't look at it. And then when I started to work on the book again, I reread some of those pages, and every time I was working on that part of the book, of course, you have to relive it in your mind. So every time you're reading it to even edit, you're reliving the moment. So it was a hard thing to write, but I think I needed to do it. It was very cathartic for me to write the whole book. I just felt like there's something out there now that honors her. Right. Yeah. So that's what I really wanted to do. And, the ending, there's pain in it, but there's such beauty in it too, because 8 years on, is it 8 years now? I don't know, something like that. 8 years on, I can still make myself cry over this. It's so easy, but it's changed from pain to just super sweet memories, like just beautiful, wonderful, just amazing thing, and her death is part of that, and how we dealt with it, how we made the choice to let her go at a point where I think it was good, because I think about that still now. Should I not have done that? And I don't have any regrets over it at all. I think it was you have to read the book to figure this out, but it was the right moment, and I don't think I would have done anything different. So I'm very comfortable and at peace with the whole thing.
I think it always is the right moment. I think this is the thing, we always look back on things, of course, and I do with my dogs, and just on a personal level, my mother, I cared for my mother for many years before she passed on, and towards the end she was struggling, and she asked me daily, for me to end it for, and I couldn't, of course. And I think it's the final gift for our dogs that, or our companion animals anyway, that we can have that kind of peaceful death, that dignified end, you know. And I think you touched on a lot of the emotional stuff at the end of the book, and again, it has a sense of that kind of beginning, middle, and end. It has a sense of journey, which I think for somebody who is starting out with a dog, especially a puppy or an adolescent who is struggling, to recognize that you know, all this will be a memory. This bit now will be a memory. You know, will be the bit we don't tend to remember. Actually, we tend to move on. That's why when we get that next puppy, we're like, oh God, I forgot about this. Like you said, we somehow our brain shovels that stuff away once we get to a certain point. And it's worth sticking in there. And I think there must be many. Well, what a great legacy for Wylie, right? I think this is a great thing.
Yeah.
But also, how many people stuck with that dog because of reading that book? How many dogs were able to go the course with those original primary caregivers because they were able to think, okay, this is tough. I love the wave analogy that you use about the kind of waves getting a bit smaller, and you can just kind of look at that. Well, Dale, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. What would you like to leave with a sort of some kind of passing words, if you like, as we finish off, and also let us know how people can find out more about you and your work, and also the book.
Okay, so Paolo, what do I like to end up with? I'd like to, on the trainer side, I'd like to try and impart that your empathy towards your client is super important, because we often hear on training, you know, pages and blogs and stuff that trainers complaining about their clients and how, you know, they should know this, and it's like they don't. And, you know, it's our job to meet them where they are, basically. So so on the human side of things, because, you know, as we know, dog training is, for me, I used to say 85% human and 15% dog. Now I think it's higher, like 95% human and the 5% dog. So that's on the trainer side. That's where I would like to see people moving to a more empathetic point of view with their clients. And on the book side, I mean, I think it's an entertaining story, but, you know, I lived it. So, but you can get the book internationally on Amazon and any of wherever books are sold online. Basically, you'll be able to get it. And it's available too in the US through Dogwise, because I know a lot of people don't like Amazon, but you can get it whatever your favorite book place is. They can either order it for you, or you can get the ebook. There's also a website for the book called worstdogever.com, and there's all kinds of stuff in there. There's more pictures of Wylie and her doing her crazy things, and so there's lots of stuff on there, and lots of information on all the reviews are there, so you can read a bunch of stuff on the dog and see some pictures of me and my dog. My business page is Dale's Dog Training Academy, so you can always reach me. Just Google that, you'll find me. I'm there. So, and then same, I have Facebook and Instagram, Dale Trains Dogs. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Dale. I have to say, when we've spoken, you know, privately, it was quite weird, because when you read a book, obviously you've got your own little voice in there as you're reading it.
Right.
But you get an idea of the author a little bit in your head. And then when we spoke for the first time together like this, I thought, oh my God, that is, you know, you come across as you do in the book. So I think that's really
awesome. That's
I think
great.
it is an awesome thing, because I think it shows a lot about how you write, actually, because your humor, a certain element of pathos as well there that comes in. It's all there in the book. Well, Dale, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And looking at some of the comments in the group, I think a lot of the people have as well. It's been really great. Just to let people know, on our next guest with the Facebook Live is Leanne Smith. Now, Leanne's a gun dog trainer, Dale, over here in the UK.
Fun.
But she's kind of a progressive force free, if you want to use that title. But mainly, what I love about Leanne's work is this friction between task orientated and care orientation, right? So gun dog work is by its very nature a task orientated approach, but Leanne has underpinned this care orientation element, looking at that dog's need and the abilities and that dog's expression of need underneath that kind of training. It's really great. So I'm really looking forward to having her. Then on the 27th.
Oh, I'll be watching that one.
Yeah, she's great, Leanne. And of course, she's also a woman, obviously, in a very kind of male, and especially over here in the UK, kind of male-dominated field, which has a very set view of gun dog work. And the number of times I've heard people say, "Oh, they're not a pet. They work. They're not a pet." As oh, okay, right. That's okay then. That's okay then. We don't have to worry about how they feel. Then on the 27th, we've got the amazing Robert Faulkner-Taylor coming in. So Robert has very much been a voice advocating on the emotional side of dog behavior for a long time, came up with the EMRA system, so that's going to be great. And we've got other people coming up. We've got Dan Garrett, we've got the wonderful Shay Kelly's coming back in at some point. I'm going to arrange the date with Shay because we had to postpone last time because of technical issues. Carolina Westland Freeman's coming in. Dr. Holly Ted, just a few names. I thought I'd throw them out there, Dale, while I've got people in. So a lot coming up. That's really great. And I really appreciate everybody for giving their time. And thank you for today. And thank you, everybody, for coming in. And we'll speak to you soon. You take care. Bye.
Loved it.
Bye.